Today is a nice day, nice and sunny. Show is over for the season, so I thought I would do my annual behind the scenes video. So let's get started with that. I'll start with my donation pole. This is a 4-inch PVC pipe with the red striping. It's just simply red duct tape. On top of it I have a light globe that I got from Home Depot. And inside of it I put a PVC pipe with about 20, maybe it's like 18 bullet pixels wrapped together in a group. And when I program that in X-Lights, I set it up as a single pixel, so they all come on as a unit and don't change down different colors and with the different effects I put on my display. And down below I just hold it in place with a bunch of sandbags, and underneath that sandbag is a umbrella stand. And so I just keep this together every year and bring it out. There's the box. I just got this red box off of Amazon. It's a lock on it. This year was interesting. We had enough wet precipitation and freezing that it actually froze the lock, and I had to bring out some hot water to unthaw it a lot of different nights. So here's one of my arches. It's made out of hex pipe, and I have some 3/4 inch, I believe. Yes, it is 3/4 inch. And I have some CPVC pipe underneath it. That actually fits inside the 3/4 CPVC pipe elbows, the PEX pipe, so that worked really well. And I've strung some RGB strip. And in between each of my arches, I have a snowflake. I have these from Gilbert Engineering. I forget the exact model number this is. It's got about 150 pixels in it. And I have a total of 7 of these all strung together. I run the arches off of one output off of my controller, and I do power injection. I break the positive off of the 3rd arch, and then I feed more power in between 2. I go right in between 4 of the arches, so it feeds 2. So I basically run power off of a power supply for 3 arches, then for 2, and then for 2. So here are my yard outlines. I'm using C9 pixels. These used to be on my house. I have 2 runs, one going on the sidewalk here, and the other one right next to my driveway. I only decorate one side of my yard, and over the other side here I have this small section of my yard which I might put some stuff in next year, but I have this pesky street light which turns on at night, so I haven't gone over there and done anything with that area of the yard. Maybe I'll talk with the city and see if they'll let me turn that light off temporarily. Back over here I do have a couple standard, Walmart 120 volt decorations. They stay on all the time. It's got kind of they are there to highlight our charity. So next here, let's look at my chroma canes. These came from Boscoyo. They're the smaller ones. I believe there is 48 pixels in each one. I run these off of 2 outputs from one of my differential receivers. And basically I run 3 closest to the street and 3 closest to the house off of different outputs. And on the edge of my yard outline here, I have these snowmen faces. What I did with these years ago is these came from Home Depot. I opened them up and I replaced the light in there because they were color changing, but I couldn't connect it to my show. So what I did is I put one of these C9 pixels inside it, and then I wired them together. And that way it connects right in off of the end of my yard outline here and just continues with the yard outline. Well, let's look at my train. This is custom built by me. I I have a video on how I built my wireframes. You can take a look at that. In these trains, what I did is when I was building it, I saw this great big hole where the window was, and I decided to put a P5 panels. Actually, it started as a P10, and then I converted them to P5s. There is an octa-scroller inside that drives it, and I have an Ethernet cord connecting to it to feed into my show network. And then I've done the same thing with each of the other cars. The way I mount my train to the ground, actually, I just set it on the ground, and I've welded a nut on the side of my frame. I'm here on my train, and I got a piece of 1x angle with a bolt and another 1x angle with a corner cut on it, where I just pound it in the ground. Here are two of my spiral trees. I got these from Matos. They're the steel ones. I get a lot of wind, and I wanted to make sure it could withstand the windstorms that we get up here. When I saw I came up with these steel ones, I jumped on them. The way these things work is I bought a piece of EMT conduit and painted it green to match that of the rest of the tree, and you put a bolt on the very top piece that fits inside the EMT conduit. And in order to prevent it from sliding around, what I've done is I put some fishing line. I know how you can see that pink yarn piece there, so I would see it when I was walking around my yard. And so I have 50-pound test line tied to the top of it, run down the stakes. I got 3 of them, 2 in the front, 1 in the back. I used 2 in the front because the wind's coming from the front, typically, at my house here. And I actually, at the bottom of it, I got a piece of rebar driven straight down on the ground, and the EMT fits over the top of that. And I have 4 of these spiral trees. I love them. They look great. They're excellent effects. And the stars on top of those are made out of coral. Here are my presents from Gilbert Engineering. They're 1 large and 1 small cube. I've mounted those on a little cart with wheels on it, so I just roll them in and out of the shop every season. I just hook up a rope to it and I just tow it. I've also staked these in the ground to prevent them from rolling around. There's a small piece of rope and a tin stake driven in the ground. Here's the back side of my large present. Inside there I have a Cope K8 using a pocket beagle in there, and it dries both of my presents here. I also have the ability to add some differential receivers to it, which you see I have a couple Ethernet connectors coming out where I can connect into it, as well as the blue Ethernet cable that's feeding from my show network straight into it. I'm not using them wirelessly, even though I do run them in remote mode. I do have a video on how I assembled these, so if you're interested in how this all got put together, check it out. So here's my Boscoyo hat. I've had this for quite a few seasons. I mounted this in the ground with rebar and PVC frame that I built. So let's walk around the backside so we can take a look at it. Okay, so you see I built a PVC frame. The part that goes down to the ground, basically, it's not glued at those T's, except for, I'll try and point to it here. Right here, it's not actually glued, it's just a friction fit, and so that way it rotates. The frame is actually attached to the coral using zip ties. I drilled some holes in particular places. And there on the bottom, let's get a little bit different view here. I have some PVC pipe again, which I've attached with zip ties. Goes straight to the ground, and I have a piece of rebar driven in. It goes up inside that PVC pipe to hold it in place. And that is running off of my new Experience Lights controller. Last year was off of my Falcon F16. This year I used the Experience 16-port controller, which also drives my Megatree. So here's my Megatree. I don't know the exact height, but I'm guessing it's like 22 feet, something like that. What I have is 1 inch spacing for the pixels, 200 on each string going up. So you could do the math on that. I've got a base that I've made out of EMT, and I bent that with a bender. And then I have some pipe tees that I put over the top of it. And what I do is I drive a piece of rebar in the ground that the pipe fits over. And then to keep it from sliding up, I have some bolts inside the pipe, and as well as I have some of these ground anchors. All of this keeps this locked into position. I've had no issues. You will also see that I'm using some, well, they're kind of J bolts now, but they were I bolts, 1/4 inch, that I bent out the end a little bit so I could hook my my strips to it. And while we're down here on the bottom, you will see I have some metal pieces in place at the bottom of my strip, which I got from Boscoyo, and attached that with the rivets. I got these from Overkill Metal Products, and so I'm using his topper as well. So that's how the bottom is situated. Let's go over to the controller. So here's my controller for my Mega Tree. I actually have a video on how I built this box. This is a large Your Pixel Store enclosure. Open it up and show you there's the card and all the outputs, inputs, and the cables connecting to differential receivers, and you can run DMX off this as well. I am using an ASAP pole. Built that quite a few years ago. And I have that staked to the ground. And as we go up the pole, you'll see the winch there. Up above, you'll see I have actually those are muffler clamps that the guy wires are attached to. I have guy wires midstream and at the very top as well. I have a total of 8 guy wires, primarily because of our weather and the wind we get. On the wiring for the Mega Tree, I use 1 input every 400 pixels. 200, the first 1 string comes out of the output from the controller. It goes up, and at the top of the Mega Tree, I've actually broken the positive line. I run it down, and then at the bottom of every other string, I'm running power injection. My controller has 4 power supplies. 2 are used for the outputs for the controllers for the pixels, and 2 are used for power injection. At the top of my Mega Tree is my star. I built that myself. Welded that together using 1/4 inch rod and a piece of 1/2 M galvanized pipe that I just welded together, and I have that attached to a flange, which is just bolted to the top of my topper. So here are my pixel poles this year. I got the tall ones from Gilbert Engineering, the Impression series. You see that it's got some candy cane type colorings on it. There's 600 pixels in each one of those. Each one is driven off of 1 output off a differential receiver, but I do power injection on that as well. And I am running all 12-volt pixels, and I have 4 of them. There is my P5 panel. I have a video on how I assembled that. It's 6 foot by 3.5. I forget the exact number of panels. It's been a while since I've done it. So next, let's go look at the back side of that. Here's the back of my P5 panel. You'll see I have 4 doors. They allow me access to the power supplies and the fuse boards on the inside. I have 3 5-volt power supplies in there, and 3 different, 6 different fuse boards in there. And the last door has my color light card and Raspberry Pi inside of it. So what I've done is I just used some cabinet hinges. I have some foam seal that fits between there to seal it up, and I just attached it with just screws. I don't open it up very often, so I just screw them in place and seal them up that way. And you'll see I have vents on the top of my panel and one at the bottom for the air intake, so it keeps it nice and cool. So here's a close-up of one of the hand hoists I use to lift my P5 screen. I have two of them. I also have a hinge here hooked to a piece of plywood that flips up, so it blocks so people don't see the hoist during the show. And I have the hinge there to deal with the high winds we get, and so that's a pivot point. So as the screen swings back and forth, the board there that's blocking the view of the hoist pivots as well. All right, so here's the inside of my main control box with my master Raspberry Pi. I have a buck converter to take it from 12 volts DC to 5 volts. The Raspberry Pi needs 5 volts. I have this 12 volt DC power supply outdoor version that I use, and it actually drives my my show router. It's an old Netgear that I had floating around, and I just use it. You'll see a Sound Blaster audio card there hooked into the USB, and I have a long audio cable. I removed my transmitter, put it in a different box so it would get away, so it would get rid of some of the interference on the sound. We'll go over to that next. So right over here next to it, I have it about 6 feet away. I have a box that has my FM transmitter in it, and you'll see I have the antenna. I moved it outside the box, and here's the inside of it. I experimented a little bit. I got some cables in here that I ended up not using for the audio output, and you'll see the power supply for the transmitter and the power I brought in for it. I also have an extra switch here. I didn't have enough outputs on my router, my show router, so that it needed to feed everything that's running in my show. I don't have that in a waterproof enclosure. I'm going to have to probably fix that next year. I have a Colt PB40 up under the eaves on my upper roof that drives the entire house. Every pixel that's on the house is driven by that. I have here another one of my differential receiver boxes. This actually has 2 receivers in it. It drives a lot of the props that are on my house on the lower level up above my garage. We'll walk around and see that in a minute. So I have snowflakes on my garage, and I have them attached with magnets. And as you see, as it's coming down and the garage door was closing, my daughter just left the house. Let's go over here. I'll show you the back. I just have some rare earth magnets attached with a piece of wood. You also see that I had to twist the wire so it would clear underneath the between the door and that seal in the garage, and just attach it like that. It works out really well. I got this idea from, I think it was Steve Nye, one of his videos he's produced. So I've done bits to follow that. You'll see here I got white wire to go between it, and I put a little cable tie thing there. I actually had to put a little screw in to hold it in place, and I run that out to my differential receiver, and there's enough slack in that wire that it goes up and underneath. You'll see the snowflakes on my larger garage door. I have 6 on this one. I had 3 on the smaller one, which I showed you just a little bit ago. I have 2 Boscoyo stockings with the matrix on top of it, and I've attached almost all of my coral using PVC pipe, which I've either bolted or zip tied to the coral. Built a frame out of PVC, and then I used, can we get in close enough? That's probably out of focus, isn't it? But there's holiday coral clips. I use a lot of those. I keep spares on hand. Every season some break because they've been exposed to the sun, because I do not take them down. And they last probably 3 years a piece, something like that. I just use them as a consumable and replace them as needed. And now my upper part of my garage there, I have it loaded up with snowflakes. I have Gilbert's XLS 450s, They're all Gilbert props up here. Those are the D snowflakes, I believe. They're a little bit, I think there's some like 200 plus pixels in those. And then those are the other snowflakes. They're not as dense. I think they're the 32, 48, something like that. I forget exactly what it is. And there's the mother of all wreaths in the Impressions edition. And you'll see above that, I have Gilbert Engineering icicles. I ordered them for the pitch of my roof. I have a video that you can watch if you're interested on how I mount those to my roof. They're extremely solid. They withstand high winds. They've been, they've been great. When I first did it, it was a bad situation, but now the way I mount them, they work perfectly every year. And I do rent a lift to install those on that upper roof. Here's my shelf for my Fobble machine. It worked out really well this year. I'll have to do a video on how I control that. I actually built this box when I was in the season because we had such cold weather. It was actually freezing the bubble solution, so I put a little heater up there with a blower on it that blowed some warmer air over the top of it. I also put a aquarium heater in the bubble solution to try and prevent it from freezing. So I used DMX control on the Fobble machine. You'll see the DMX connector there. And I actually used just Ethernet cable, and I soldered it to the connections. I found the information and actually followed Kenneth Spade of Christmas where he was doing DMX control of a moving head. I followed his wiring that he did for that and plugged it into my Falcon controller to drive the DMX signals to the Fobble machine and turn it on when I wanted it to. New addition this year is Buzz, Woody, and Rex from Toy Story. I built those wireframes. I have a couple videos on how to build a wireframe. I followed that exact same process. The video I have posted is on the Olaf, but you can take a look at how I built those. I used the exact same process with these guys. I just didn't make them singing faces because there wasn't quite as much room for me to do that. New this year was my Rosa Grande arch. Put that over my entry window, which is a half circle. It fit over it perfectly. It was the right size for it. Really liked how that looked in my show this year. Next to it is one of the Gilbert snowflakes. And then up above on my upper roof, I have Santa and his reindeer. Again, I built these. You can go to my video on how I build wireframes if you're interested in making some of these yourself. And I also have a video on how I've mounted these wireframe props to my roof without putting holes in the roof. Over to the right of it, I have Olaf singing face. And then I have a Boscoyo stocking, which is also a singing element. We go above that, you will see the baby of all wreaths. Didn't have room for the mother of all wreaths up on top there. So I just got the baby. I have a couple of Boscoyo spinners and a couple of Gilbert snowflakes underneath that. The Experience Light Controller drives the yard. Everything that's landed in the yard is driven by Experience Light Controllers and its differential receivers. Everything that's attached to the house is driven by my Culp K40. Again, using differential receivers moved locally to next to each of the props. Well, it took me a little while to get to doing a behind the scenes video. As you can see, I've actually already finished taking down my props from a shot of my house behind me. So I hope my walkthrough of my display this year will help somebody out there. You guys all have a wonderful day.